Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unschooling Lifestyle. Today, I have Mandy Moon. She and I connected when we went through Dana Martin's program for advocacy and coaching for unschooling. And I love her, like her energy. She is the most peaceful person, one of the most peaceful persons I've ever met. So, Mandy, we're so happy to have you here. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for those kind words.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much for being here with us. Would you mind starting with your story? Like how I'm gonna just dive in right away. How I know you're a nurse, you were a nurse by trade. You now do massage. So how did you get started with unschooling? What's your story? I want to know.
What's my story? Oh my gosh. Okay. In a nutshell, I have three boys,
Mm-hmm.
and my oldest is 27 years old. He went through public school. He went through the whole experience of me being an authoritarian parent, and then I have an 18-year-old and a 12-year-old. So we started our lifestyle transition and change into peaceful parenting and um, and unschooling basically around 8 years ago. So
Okay.
I've kind of lived both sides of the coin. And so just through my experience with authoritarian
Mm,
parenting and the whole public school system,
yeah.
I can tell you that like there was a lot of disconnect and a lot of just unnecessary stress and not cultivating relationship
Mm,
that we
yes.
should have just because we didn't know how. It was just one of those things that it was just that was what was normal. That's how we were raised. That's how things, how the world works. We didn't know anything else. Um, and so through that experience, we all learn through experiences, trial and
Right.
error. And I just knew
Yeah.
that there was something better. There had to be something like this isn't the way life is supposed to be.
Most definitely.
Right. So, in a sense, we both, me and my husband, had a spiritual awakening, around, probably 9 years ago. And then through that awakening, we had just, change in perception and a change, like a paradigm shift in our mindset. So we started doing the transitioning of the peaceful parenting when my 18-year-old was probably in the third or fourth grade. And
Okay.
then, yeah, so that's kind of how it shifted. And like I just can't say enough how important it is to cultivate those connections and those relationships. And, once looking at myself and doing the inner work, the ability for me to like kind of self-reflect and view
Mm,
myself,
yeah.
a totally different way of doing life. And I've had to look honestly at myself
Yes.
and my reactions and my triggers and
Yes.
the root causes of all of these things. And in that, I was able to kind of redeem myself and my
Mhm.
son, my oldest son, in our relationship. So, having those tough conversations of like, I had no idea what I was doing. I'm so sorry, like we're gonna do things differently now. Like, and that changed our relationship. Not that,
Words.
not that we had like a terrible, terrible relationship, but there was disconnect there. He wasn't, coming to me for those teenage years
Mhm.
of guidance and all of those things. He was going to his peers. And
Yes.
one of the books that changed my life was Gabar Mate. He has a book out called Hold On to Your Kids. And
Mhm.
oh man, that is a that is
Oh my goodness.
a book that can really shift your mindset of like how important parents are to their children and in their lives. And when we have that authoritarian, like no one wants to be controlled and manipulated. And so when we try to control, manipulate our children, it's like they turn from us
Yes.
in more ways than one. So
Yeah, because you said so much. So let me see if I can try to back up a little bit. So it's so interesting that you came to unschooling through a different side of spirituality, right? That spiritual awakening. How? Because most of us, I feel like there's one question that we ask ourselves, like, is this the right thing for us? And then, whether it's your job or the school system that you're in, but I don't think a lot of us think about the spiritual aspect of our lives as the beginning of our journey. At least for me, that came much, much later.
Mm.
Right, like that, that's been happening. That's been the latest part of our journey. It's about the spiritual aspect of it. So, but how do you get to the spiritual aspect? Like, what happens? Was it the book that you read, or was it a friend? Was it something? Please tell me more.
Okay. For me personally, and I think it all comes in different,
Hmm.
journeys and avenues, but for me personally, I was a nurse working in the emergency room. And all of my life, I have been pretty much an emotional stuffer, like, so emotions come up and I just stuff it down and suck it up and not really deal with that. And so my body, like in my early 30s, my body just started responding to like, okay, enough is enough. And
Yes.
started getting anxiety and panic attacks and depression kind of came on. And I was like still in that mindset of like, oh, this, what is wrong? I've never had experienced that before. And so for me, just kind of looking back and really, I guess, looking at the root causes of things, I feel like that was my body waking up from survival mode. I had been in survival mode for so long
Mhm.
through going through, childhood and public school system and just life in general. I was really walking around just asleep, not really fully aware and high in my higher consciousness. So I feel like that was my body waking up saying,
Mhm.
and that was when things started moving. And yeah, it was difficult. And yeah, I had to figure out how to handle all that. But that's what ultimately pushed me and cultivated me into like a life of spirituality, a life
Wow.
of meditation and shadow work and all of those things. Because I had experienced, I was, kind of grew up in the fundamentalism of Christianity.
Mhm.
And so at some point in my life in my 20s, I just got really angry about life and about the world and about God. And so I just kind of stepped back and put a clean slate on everything. And I kind of identified as an atheist for a little while. And that's
Okay.
probably one of the best things that I could have done because it took away all of that programming,
Mhm.
what God represents and what God is. Um, Once I started living my life a little bit, I realized, okay, there's something, I can't honestly and authentically say I'm an atheist. So
Mhm.
to agnostic, so it was kind of like, like the universe or God was just,
Yes,
let's wipe all this clean, all this indoctrination, all of these programs. Let's just
exactly.
we'll start over with a relationship. So that
But at that point, it was coming from you, from your authentic self, trying to find what worked for you, what was meaningful for you, versus people giving us what we should see as meaningful and worth living for, right? And I
right.
feel like sometimes that's the way we go into this parenting. I remember going into a fair when my son was 10 months old, and I was looking for the best school. I wanted the best school, and now I'm thinking back to it. I didn't really thought that I wanted the best school. I just knew that the rest of the world expected me as a parent to find the best school. So I started, just like everyone said, the earlier the better, right? So I just went in, and the lady's like, well, how old's your son? And I'm like, well, he's 10 months old. And she looked at me like I was crazy, and looking back, it was crazy to be doing that at such, at that time. I should have
Yeah.
been with my son,
Right.
cultivating that connection. So I really love that. So as you're going through this process of, finding yourself and, spirituality, what is your oldest son like? What is his relationship or reaction to this change that he start to experience, and how do that comes in with your relationship with him? Like, did you tell him what was going on? Did you explain to him like what was happening there?
Yeah, it took me a little bit to process, and try to
Hmm.
figure out what was even happening to myself. But once I kind of got a good understanding of where I wanted my life to go and the things that we were going to change, um, I, just had a conversation with him and said, sorry, like what,
Sorry.
you would never deserved to be treated that way. You never deserved to be controlled and manipulated and all of those good things. And I think he was probably in shock for a little bit. And he was like, do I trust you? Or, someone here.
Yes.
But, I just keep showing up authentically. I keep showing up in unconditional love for him. And over time, he feels that and he knows that. So we have a wonderful relationship now, and he does call me for those times, that a mother wants their child to call
The
and
call. Yeah.
mom, I need some help, or I need guidance, or I need some advice. Before, like, he didn't care about my advice.
Oh,
But he knows that I have his best interest at heart. So he does. We have a wonderful relationship now. And I can't thank peaceful parenting and unschooling and like the whole shift of the mindset of like coming out of that authoritarianism and all of that control. And once I realized that I was a manipulator, that was like, I don't want to be a manipulator.
wow.
Like, wow, I really had to look at myself. And some of that stuff was a hard pill to swallow, but
Yes.
so
Yes.
worth it.
So in that, I don't think I've ever heard it like that, to say like we were manipulators, because we were trying to, extract a certain type of behavior from them, right? That makes us feel better.
Yeah.
And so that's so harsh, like to say,
No.
to see that and to say that that's me, that's what I was doing. So once you see that, so what's the next step to be able to go further or to look down deeper into yourself and find out what we have to change at that point? Like, how, once we see that, what happened? Or once you did that, what happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the work came from mindfulness meditation. And
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but mindfulness is kind of, for me, it's a practice where I sit and just allow my thoughts to come and
Okay.
I just observe them. So I kind of sit back and observe my thoughts, observe feelings coming up. Not, I don't, and I practice not becoming those things. So I used to really identify strongly with my thoughts and my emotions and thinking everything was true. And then that led to reactions.
Uh,
So when you step back and realize, okay, these are just programs coming through because the body is responding to certain stimuli in the environment and certain stressors that we've experienced in past memories. And so once I kind of cultivated a practice of me being able to sit down and really observe my thoughts, observe my emotions coming up, then I could start doing that all throughout the day. So I practice mindfulness throughout the day. If I catch myself in like a time travel, so to speak, thinking about the past or thinking about the future, I rein it back into the present moment. What's happening right now? Am I safe? Yes.
okay.
You know,
Um,
um, so yeah, so that's kind of the beginning of the just being aware. And a really great tip or technique to start that is to take, for instance, your right hand and
okay.
make an intention in the morning and say,
Okay.
I'm going to pay attention and be in full awareness of my right hand all day.
Oh,
And
wow.
and when you realize you're not paying attention, because you kind of have that anchor, like you can be doing multitasking thing, but
Mhm.
always pay attention to your right hand, or something that kind of stands out to you. Maybe it's your glasses on your face or something on your body. Um,
Uh-huh.
and that helps to kind of cultivate that being aware of all things at all times. Because a lot of times
Wow.
we just kind of go into autopilot.
Yes.
Have you ever been driving in a car and you're like
You don't
driving,
even know how
driving, and
you
then you
got
pull up to
there.
the driveway and you're like, I don't remember driving here.
Yes. Oh, yeah, totally. I feel like that happens to me. And once I'm actually, and I do that, when I go to work because of, I know the way, but I feel like when I'm actually trying to be aware, I start like noticing things that I have never noticed before. And then I'm wondering, I'm like, am I lost? Did I make a wrong turn? I've never seen this building before. Because I'm always on that autopilot, right? And I feel like when we were in the school system, and my son only went to school for, like the end of kindergarten and a little bit of what would have been first grade for him. I felt like we were in autopilot all the time. get up, get ready, go to school, come back, let's get ready to go Chinese, swimming, martial arts, come home, let's eat fast, 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 because we have to get up and do it all over again.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was so hard to it was a little hard, for me to let that go, because I'm like, well, now what? Now what do I do? How do I replenish this connection? But then I realized that the one that I was missing more so was me than him.
Mhm.
And that's when I read your website, like when, Mandy, for those of you, if please look at her website, like she has studied a lot, she has read a lot, she has so many wonderful tools on her site. But one of the things that caught my attention was the reparenting of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like that once I started to be more aware, I felt like I had to do that in a small way, not because my parents were bad, but just simply some of the needs that I had perhaps had not been met by my parents, not consciously ignoring them. I don't think, my parents are wonderful people. It's just, they just didn't know how to meet those needs that I had back then.
Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit more about that? And did you have to do that for yourself as you're going through this journey?
Oh, for sure. Yes. So that's kind of where the mindfulness kicks in, because
And
you're aware of those negative thoughts and those negative emotions. And
mhm,
so then once you start becoming more aware of those things, then you can pinpoint like that nasty voice that's going on in my head criticizing, that's where I need to reparent myself. If I can show up for myself and be compassionate, for instance, a really great example, and I still deal with this, now too, like it's just an ongoing lifestyle. It's an ongoing, like
yes.
not something that you do 2 or 3 times and you're like, oh,
And then you're done. Yes, yes,
right.
definitely.
It's
Yes.
definitely a lifestyle, because we just have, thousands and thousands of programs and memories and all kinds of things. But recently my children got sick. It's been about last month or so. And so I was getting all of this stuff together, all of our um supplements and all the things that they're going to need to recover. And
Hmm.
so I'm doing that, and I start noticing my body start tensing up, and I start noticing that, I'm not breathing and I'm not really being present, and I'm worried about this and I'm worried about that. So that's when I step back, take a nice deep breath. Okay, where is this? What's happening here? And then I start noticing those background thoughts of like,
Yes.
oh, if you would have done this, then they wouldn't be sick. If you would have done, all of those negative things. And so that's when I take a deep breath and say, you know what? I have the intention of being really compassionate with myself. I am doing the best I can. I've done the best I can, things like that. So just kind of redirecting those programs and those thoughts that kind of
Totally.
up and start creating that tension in your body, and then start creating that inability to breathe effectively.
Oh my goodness. That's so powerful. And I love what you said about it is definitely a process. It's something that it is done, slowly as you transition into a different way of being a parent, or or even if you're not a parent, like if you have those, those issues about in your body, if you notice all of those reactions, I mean, that's definitely something that you want to revisit, right? um
Yeah.
but it eventually shows up better, or it shows up for me, it showed up a lot because my children would do something and I would just be like all upset, like I was like all crazy. And then I'm like, well, what's happening? Why am I doing
Exactly.
why
Yeah,
am
and
I
when you
doing
start
this?
showing up, being compassionate for yourself,
Yeah.
you have your cup full, and you don't have those. I mean, not as many reactions,
Mhm.
and so you can treat people more compassionately, and
Yes.
from a standpoint of actually being a peaceful parent. And sometimes like I have a really I guess a habit of overbooking myself, and
Yes.
that is a big trigger for me. And so like I really have to stay on top of that. And
Mhm.
so I remember coming in one day, and I had 50 things in the back of my mind saying, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta
Yeah.
do this. And when I walk in the door, my youngest son is like, Mom, I need this and I need, and so immediately I just felt like, rage wanting to come out, because
Yeah.
100 other things to do. And so I wasn't, the nicest or the most peaceful in that moment.
Yes.
But I just remember saying something like, like, okay, give me a minute, just kind of
Yes.
really,
Mhm.
snooty or whatever. And then he recognizes, because he's lived this lifestyle, when he's not being respected and when he's not being treated correctly. And so he immediately was just like, whoa, is everything okay? Like, why do you talk to me that way? And most parents would say, how dare you say
How
that to me?
dare you? Yes,
But
yes.
that was my moment. I was like, take a deep breath. Oh my God, I am so sorry.
Oh,
Like
sorry.
I
Yes,
am, I was overwhelmed and I overbooked myself, and I should not have treated you that way.
yes,
I should not
yes.
have disrespected you. And he's like, that's okay. Can I help you with anything? Like
That's so
he's
sweet.
the peaceful parent too. So
That is so sweet. But they learn by example though. And I love that. I love that because we have gone through the same things. When I was just talking to someone actually about an experience. We were in Mexico City, and my son, his shirt, he was moving his arms, and we were in the middle of the line, trying to get through customs and picking up luggage. And I'm like, can you stop doing that? And he's like, but why? And I'm like, that's a great question. I don't know why it's bothering me. And then he said, well, take a shovel and dig deeper. I'm like, oh. And then the person, I was like, okay. So that kind of put me at ease at that point, because he noticed that I also said that I don't know why it's bothering me. It's probably the rest of the world that, what we're going through right now, that it's putting me in this moment. But the person who I was telling this story, he said, because I said so. Like when I told him that my son had asked why, he immediately said, well, because I said so. And I'm like, no, that's not what I did. But,
right.
but I love it how they recognize themselves, what's happening, and they have the courage and the right to say why, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like out in the world, sometimes that's not very well seen.
Right.
And it's just so hard to see that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So, so your son, so everybody now, so he has been on school his whole life, or did he go to your youngest son, right?
Yeah, my youngest son went to kindergarten for about half a semester.
Oh, okay.
That's when we decided, okay,
This
this
isn't gonna
isn't gonna
work.
work out, because we were already peaceful parenting him, and then you put him into an authoritarian paradigm in a school with a bunch of other, children and adults that
Mm,
are totally living an authoritarian, totally different
yeah, whose
mindset.
energy is completely different, right?
Yes. And so he, of course he's gonna stand up for himself. He's gonna say things, and authority doesn't like that.
Yes, no, they
And
don't like that.
he's not rude or disrespectful or anything like that. He's just like, hey, what's going
Asking.
on here? This is off. This is not respectful.
Yeah,
And
this is not what I'm used to.
right. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I do feel like this lifestyle really has taught me that it's not about being perfect. It's not about being 100% like I'm peaceful all the time. I have my triggers. I have my moments. My kids have their moments. We
We
all
all do.
like regulated. And but it's in the reaction to those experiences and those reactions that you can really cultivate that authentic relationship, that authentic really
Yes.
connection with them, and
Yes.
just show up as compassionate as you can be in the moment. So
Yeah. And also as a person that has needs too, right? Because I feel like as moms, we are told that we have to run ourselves dry in order to be good moms, right? Or at least that's the way I felt in the past, that the more tired I was, the better mom I was, right? If I was trying to do everything, if I was working, if I was trying to keep the house clean and be home. And now I feel like, I don't say to my children, like, I need time, but sometimes, like I'll just explain or just say, hey, I just need 5 minutes, can you just give me 5 minutes? I just came home from work, it's talk to over 1,000 people sometimes, I'm like, I just need 5 minutes for myself. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll come back. But I think that was one of the biggest learnings that I had to do, to be able to see that I had needs too, and that my husband has needs too, and that they have to be met for all of us to be, like in sync almost with each other, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
I,
another great Gabar Mate book is The Myth of Normal, and that kind of
yes.
reminded me of that because I've even found that in like my professional life, especially when I was a nurse, I was working 12-hour shifts.
Hmm.
And it was almost like, a badge of pride that nurses would carry around.
Same
Oh,
thing for us.
I haven't taken a break for 12
Mhm.
hours. I haven't gone to the bathroom. I haven't,
Yes.
had a drink of water for 12 hours. I was just so, like it's almost like this. Oh, it's like the doing is like the most successful thing that we can be.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
really just stepping back and realizing it's not all about the action and the masculine
Yes.
energy. It's about that feminine essence as well. So
Absolutely, though. That is his new book, right? His newest book, The Myth of Normal.
I believe so. I believe it's his.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I listened to a podcast and it really resonated with me what he said. He said it's better to feel guilty than to feel resentful.
Mm.
And that really resonated on that aspect that, I felt resentful for having to do so many things, but I didn't want to feel guilty for saying no, right? And
Right.
sometimes, so God knows, I needed to say no in order to feel like a human again, though. But that is so fascinating. And speaking of nursing, I know you left nursing, right? You left
I did. I did.
hospital. Yeah.
Yes.
How long ago did you leave that job?
Um, officially, like, full time and officially, I left it about 2 years ago. So I did a little
Okay.
bit of home health here and there, but it was also not something that I would that I could really truly be in a place where I felt like I was respected and
Yes.
it's that I was respecting people, especially do no harm and things like that. So there's just many things in that the industry that is just a little bit off and it doesn't resonate with me. And so I
Yes.
really resonate with the more the wellness aspect and the whole holistic point of view instead of just um, putting band-aids on things.
Yeah. And
I really like to get to the root issues.
yeah, and I love that because it's such a journey, you start with one thing, then you move on to another, and you just keep asking questions and finding out what works for you to be authentic to yourself and to the rest of your family. And one thing you said in the past that you ask people sometimes is when they have feelings, right? That you ask them, where do you feel it in the body, right?
Yes.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit more about that deep connection that I feel like sometimes we don't really see that. Like we think the body is it's like foreign to our emotions. It's like something's happening to the body, but we don't look into our emotions. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think through the years, like spirituality and physical health has kind of it was separated at some point and it really needs to come back together because we are
Yes.
holistic beings that have this energetic body, this physical body, this emotional body.
Yes.
And so putting all of that back together is basically, the inner work in a nutshell. Um,
Yes.
so like the feeling the sensations in your body that again comes back to the foundation of mindfulness because I can feel before I even have an emotion, I can feel my body responding to things. So like I'll have a tightness in the chest and then I can feel, oh, my breathing is starting to, the pattern is starting to change or whatever. And that's not something that I could really notice in the beginning, but since I've been doing it for, a good 9, 10 years now, it's something that I feel my body now first. Before I would feel my reaction and just like, um,
That's kind of where I'm at right now. I definitely feel the reaction, as
I would
some.
feel the reaction and
Yes.
react and then try to clean up all the mess afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And now I can feel that coming so that I don't have that huge reaction. I'm also not stuffing emotions. I'm feeling them and I'm
Okay.
processing them, but I'm also not, for instance, scientific research is showing that if you, are angry all the time and you're like yelling at people and doing this, like your body, you're more likely to have a stress attack or a stroke, heart attack, things like that. And so not only is stopping emotions not good for you, but that, you know, spewing it all over everything is not good for you either.
Yes.
So it's a nice fine balance of being able to process emotions, but also process before you have a reaction that
Oh
you
my
typically
goodness.
would have to feel guilty or stressed out about later.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That is so true because I'm such a reactor. Like I'm just like all the time. And now I have noticed, even though I don't, it sounded like mindful meditation, like a being more aware of it. I don't think I had that name, connected to it, but I know I'm like a little bit better, just a little bit,
Yeah.
where I just don't like spill all over the place and like stop. I'm like, stop. Think about it, like what's happening here, though. But besides mindful meditation, are there any other tools that as you begin this journey, into like feeling, if you start in that area of like your emotions, and you're like, I know there's got to be something better, the way to handle, this emotional self that I have, that's also beautiful, right? Because it allows us to feel what we need, and it allows us for us to seek what we need. So any other tools that you have used with your clients?
Mhm. Yeah, so journaling is a really great thing.
Yeah.
Just writing that down on paper. And, it's not something that you really need to sit and think about what I'm going to write, but just get the pen and paper out and just write down everything that comes
What
to your
comes out?
mind,
Yes.
and don't try to, like change it or judge it. It's just like,
Mhm.
if my mind said this is what I write down. And sometimes you're like, whoa.
Yes.
You like your first impulse is going to be like, oh no, I need to change that. That's not.
Yes, exactly. Because we have that judgment, right?
Yes, yeah. So yeah,
Oh,
journaling is really great. The mindfulness, and with the mindfulness, scientific research is showing that just 3 to 5 minutes per day can
okay.
start changing the neural pathways in our brain. Ultimately, it's really recommended to do it at least 20 minutes a day.
Mhm.
But 3 to 5 minutes in the beginning is like wonderful. Like you will start noticing changes. And actually, I think the people around you start noticing the changes
Yes.
too. So yeah, the journaling, EFT tapping, which is
Oh, yeah.
emotional freedom technique, is also a really great. It's basically a combination between modern psychology and some ancient Chinese
Okay.
acupressure, sorry. So you're tapping on different parts of the body. It sends signals to the amygdala, which is the control center of the emotions, and it just helps to calm the central nervous system. And then you can add in affirmations to that, or you can just send those signals to your body when, and just really pay attention to, okay, my chest is tight. My chest feels like I have an elephant sitting on it, like I'm not
Yes.
feeling like I should. I feel nauseous, all of those things that we think, like headaches and the nausea or anything like that, tightness in the throat, all of those things can be associated with emotions. And so if we tune in to our symptoms, there's an emotion attached somewhere.
Yes, yes, most definitely. There's always an emotion attached to it. And sometimes we just don't want to deal with them, right?
Yeah.
But we kind of have to especially when we have children, because they should not be you know, the people that receive the mess that, yes, like they should not do that, because that's not their job, right? I
Right.
mean, their job is to be children, is to be free and to enjoy and to learn as they go and to what they need. So you went through this whole spiritual journey, and then you and I met in, like, in Dana's program for advocacy and coaching. So so you found unschooling and stuff like that, and how does that come in a little bit more nowadays, or how does that mix with your spiritual work and your current work?
My current work. Um, well, I don't know. I just don't see a difference in them. Like
Okay.
it's so intertwined that
Yes.
couldn't
It's a
separate it if
lifestyle.
I
Yeah.
wanted it to. Um, so yeah, I mean, and really, like, I guess the peaceful parenting aspect, just trying to figure out what to do different with relationships and things brought me into unschooling because
Yes.
we tried the public school system with my youngest after we were peaceful parenting. We knew it was not going to work out.
Yeah.
Uh, and so we pulled him. And so immediately I thought, okay, well, I'm going to unschool or not unschool. I said homeschool, so
Homeschool, yeah.
I was like throwing the schedules in and I had all of these,
Uh,
ideas and routines going on and it lasted
yes.
for not even a day. So then I remember reading unschooling years ago, when I started diving into all of the peaceful parenting and just all different
Okay.
ways of thinking. I had
Yes.
Dana's book and I had, followed her YouTube page, the Sparkling Martins. And so
Hmm.
I had an idea of it, but it was just one of those things like, oh, I would never be able to live that. But then when we tried the homeschooling, and I was like, okay, that's not working.
That's
And
not gonna work.
school's not going to work. Like, what was that thing that Dana said? And then I started digging back into really dove deep into unschooling, and I was like, this is it. This is our answer, and we've been living that ever since. So yeah.
Wow. Was your husband like in the same you say you both of you started your spiritual like awakening around the same time. Was he on the same like path or like at the same steps when you became onto, with unschooling as well, right? It sounds like it.
Well, I kind of brought him into the peaceful parenting paradigm. And so
Okay.
I've been reading and
Mhm.
listening to hundreds of hours of lectures from Al
Yeah.
and all kinds of people. And so I like came prepared because, he was the authoritarian parent. And as I came prepared and I'm like, okay, and, we both knew just intuitively that something needed to change.
Something needed to change.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was diving into all of that information and then I just went to him and presented it to him and I said, look, like I know that we are struggling with our parenting skills here and we have a long history of lots of trials and errors and let's try something different. Like let's just give this 6 months. Like I've done the research, I've read it, I feel passionate about it. And thankfully he trusted me. He trusts me and he's like, okay, I don't think this is going to work, but we'll try it for 6 months. And so he, read a couple of things and just to kind of get the gist of what he was supposed to be doing. And yeah, that's kind of how he followed. And then once the whole school system came up and like he was pretty much on board with everything. And thankfully he's
Yeah.
trusted me the whole way through. So
Yes, yes. I've noticed that. It's like, for us too, it's like my husband has trusted me, like all the way through, from the beginning. And I am just so grateful though, because, I had to go on my journey and he kind of had to like kind of wait a little bit sometimes, right? That I needed to come up to this certain discovery and then I will share it with him and stuff like that. So I
yeah.
really love that. And then what happened during COVID for you guys? Like, I know, for every state was different. Um, in Michigan, we were able to like go out to the parks. That was kind of like our saving grace, like to go out. That's when we started. So what, you started unschooling prior to COVID. So how did it change anything for you guys in Texas? I don't think so, right? I mean,
No, we were actually living in Iowa.
oh, you were in Iowa. You were in a different
At the
state.
time when all that went down, and my oldest son was in Texas, and I
Okay.
kind of had the idea that we were going to move back to Texas, and
Okay.
that was a big catalyst for our quick move because we were like, okay, at the time in the beginning we had no idea what was going on, we didn't know
Yeah.
we were
Hmm.
going to
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I couldn't get to Texas fast enough because I didn't want to be, however many miles away. I think it's like 800 or 900 miles away from my kid.
From your
And
son, yeah.
so we picked up and moved during all of that. And so
Yeah,
we
that's
came to
so funny.
Texas,
We did
land,
too.
and pretty much living life normal in Texas. So we didn't
Okay.
really have any changes in lifestyle at all.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool though that you guys were able to like keep that, for us. I mean, because it was the beginning and that we started homeschooling during the pandemic, we were what people call pandemic homeschoolers, like I went into this like panic mode and I bought a whole bunch of curriculum. I mean, I had all the schedules. I think that's the one thing that I miss from traditional homeschooling is just like that I could do all the schedules and all of it. Of course, my children didn't like it, but I love doing that, right? For
Right.
anything. I just love that. But even it was a really nice transition though. So,
Mhm.
and I feel like a lot of people are now that things have opened up, you know, people are thinking differently and people are looking for different options. And it looks different than how either homeschooling or I think people look at alternative education a lot different that they did before 2020.
Mhm.
And I really, 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 really love that because it is so needed. It is so, so needed to find people that think, that children should be equal, that children are equal to anybody. They're just as important as anyone else, though. So how does that landscape looks in Texas? You are in northern Texas, right?
Yes, so I'm in the panhandle of Texas. And
Okay.
yeah, so when we got here, we kind of let the dust settle before I really did anything like, with the move and everything. It was chaotic, but and we finally found a home. And, there's a lot of homeschooling here, but it's
Okay.
very much monopolized by like, let's make homeschool look like public school, but
Well,
at
at
home.
home. Yeah.
And so we really didn't fit into any of the groups. We went to a couple of different little meetups or co-ops or something, and I just knew that like, oh, this is way
That
too
wasn't your, yeah.
controlling and not constricting, that was when I had, I guess I had, when we started doing that, it was before I got into Dana's program. And so
Okay.
I got into Dana's program and she just, how she is, she just pulled all kinds of ideas from you. And so I was like, you know what, like I can create community here because we didn't really have community here when we moved.
Yes. Hmm.
And so basically helped get that ball rolling for me and that push that I needed to
Okay.
create community in our local area. So that's what I've done. I've created a Facebook group and we have families. We have 200 families that are,
No, you just passed the 200, right?
yeah, we just got 200 families and we just started this just I think in August or maybe October of last year. So not too long. But we have, monthly meetups and we have science fairs and we do all kinds of things, and it's all child led. So it's not anything forced. We have a lot of creative art if they want to, they get to create whatever art they want. It's not
Yeah.
something formulated for them and saying this
Yeah.
is have to do this and this.
Yes.
So it's very much child led, and I love the community that we've created. And a lot of people they basically came in because of the peaceful parenting, because we don't see
Okay.
that a lot in Texas. We see a lot of authoritarian
Yeah.
parenting. And
Hmm.
so when I just the peaceful parents title, they had no idea what unschooling was. And so they were
Okay.
coming into for peaceful parenting because they're like, there's more people out here, like me. And I'm like, so that was kind of a great way that unschooling became more noticeable and recognized
Noticeable.
in the
Yeah.
community.
Hmm.
And there were there's people saying, like, oh, that's what we've been doing. We just didn't know what it was called.
What it was called. Yes.
you
I
know.
love that. Yes.
And yeah, so we do have these gatherings, and the new people will come in, and they're like, this feels so good. This feels so right. So it's been a very rewarding experience. So.
That is so fascinating though. And it's just so amazing that you have been able to like pull those little like, group of people because I think that energy, when you're like in that frequency that, everyone needs to be respected, everyone's needs are important and everyone's needs should be met, and everyone's curiosity should be explored and, and respected, then I think that spreads out
Mhm.
I really, really feel that. And funny enough, because I was in the airplane today, I was coming in, I came into Chicago, and there was a gentleman that was he was reading How Children Learn, by John Holt. And
Yeah.
he was just, I was like, I looked at the book, and then I'm like, oh, what a great book. I'm like, did you read the first one, How Children Fail? Because I thought that was really interesting as well. This is from back in the 70s, right? And he's like, no, but I'm like, if you don't mind me asking, like, what brought that up? And he's like, oh, my wife is 14 weeks pregnant. And they were already exploring that different, they knew that their child that they're bringing into this world, that they know that they want something different, they know that there is something different out there. So having this, communities, spread out throughout the United States, the world, I think will help reach more and more people. So
Sure, yeah. And I don't
yeah,
know about you, but I've noticed like the newer generations, I know they get a lot of slack from some of the older generations, but like I really feel like they're coming in at a higher vibration. They're coming in with
definitely.
knowledge of, hey, everyone needs to be equal, everyone needs to be respected.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so, it's like we need, like, the older generations need to catch up with the
Yes. And I think some of them are catching up though, but definitely, I mean, the word that kept coming up for me this morning, mostly because of a podcast, was liberation, right? Liberation of that conditioning that, we're supposed to all fit in a box. And then
Yes.
we are supposed to do the same thing, and that learning is linear when it is definitely not. And we are all here for a purpose, a beautiful purpose for that. And having those, younger generations, like you say, being like, wait, there is more, there is totally a lot more. I think that'll help out a lot in the, for our children and for this world. So,
For
but
sure.
thank you so much for talking to us, Mandy. Before we go, can you share something like, what would you say to those parents that are like coming into unschooling through, from a different avenue, like from, some people, you came from the spiritual, like that was your, like, into this world, and I came from like the education, like panic type of side, and then I found my way into spiritual. So for people that are coming in, or they're already in their spiritual journey, and then all of a sudden, unschooling comes up, what would you say to them? Like, words of wisdom for them.
Oh, if you're already on your spiritual journey, like, use your intuition, because, don't second guess that intuition. You will have that urge and that pull on your heart to not control and not manipulate when you are in alignment with love. And so there's no other way to go around it. Like, you can't lie to yourself about it. You can't, and not be integrity. You have to be in alignment. And if you're in that alignment and you're wanting to move toward unconditional love and this alignment with, peace and revolution and evolution,
Yes.
listen to your intuition. And like, that was one of the hardest things for me as a mom, thinking, like, not like, I never knew or never had been able to cultivate that trust of myself, because I'd always been like, oh no, you shouldn't be eating, or, like, I always had people telling me what I should and shouldn't be doing. And so
Yes.
I never was able to cultivate um, that true confidence, so
Yeah.
that my intuition, and I can tell you story after story of things as a mother that I intuitively knew that I kept my mouth shut about, because I thought
Yes.
the authority or the white coats had it all figured out.
Had
But
better
as a mother,
answers.
I was like, raging inside, like, I don't think this is right. I don't think this is right. But I didn't trust myself enough. So
Mm.
really step into trusting yourself, trusting that intuition. And it all comes in alignment once you start doing that. Because if you're on the path of love, and if you're on the path to make this world a better place and a better, way for people, trust that intuition and it will fall into place. And
Yeah.
like, there's no other avenue that I found. Like, please tell me if you find any other avenue that doesn't control and manipulate. So
Yes. Yeah, I think definitely you're right about, listening to yourself and listening to that intuition, because it would lead you to where you need to go. I mean, once you start listening, I mean, your body, your mind, your heart will speak to you,
Yes.
and you cannot you cannot ignore it.
You
I can
cannot.
guarantee you cannot ignore it. So thank you so much, Mandy. One more thing, obviously. I mean, I always start to talk and I get going, but so what are you working on, and how can people connect with you to work on spiritual work, shadow work, unschooling work? How can they connect with you?
You can visit my website at www.mandymoonland.com. And so it's Mandy Moonland. That's my maiden and my married name put together.
That
Um,
I love that. That's
there, there you can sign up for, I do unschooling coaching. Like if you just want to, set your lifestyle up and you're not even sure where to start. I
Mhm.
have a few packages for that. I've got, if you need direction and peaceful parenting. And really the peaceful parenting is more of inner work. It's not about controlling your child. It's not about
Yeah.
doing anything like that. It's doing the inner work so that you can cultivate a peaceful relationship. So there's that. And I also do shadow work, which I know that is a broad term, but it's just basically inner work. A lot of people will say, "Oh, that's
Mhm.
scary," that's a scary term or whatever. But it really isn't. It's really just being mindful, and your shadow is going to be that ego side of yourself that
Okay.
is allowing that inauthenticity to remain, and the integrity to say stagnant. So
Yes.
the inner work or the shadow work is going to be really focusing on kind of your blind spots of how you treat people, how you treat yourself, things like that.
Yes. Oh my goodness, so important. So please, if you're listening and you're resonating with Mandy, and Mandy's energy is just amazing. So visit her website, and then we'll have all of that information posted on the links, on our YouTube channel, and everything will be there for you to connect with her if you need the help. And this is why I do this work, to connect with others, because when I started, I felt a little it was overwhelming to me, but there are so many wonderful people out there that can help you, because if you're feeling the need that that there's something different, I assure you there is something else out there. So thank you so much for joining us, Mandy. We loved our chat, and I learned so much from you always, all the time. Thank you so much,
Wonderful. Thank you for
everyone.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will see you next time. Please remember that your time is precious. I hope you're making it count, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.